joining us to talk about the big lie. I mean, you've heard me kind of set up the interview. There's so many examples. It's so wild-eyed now. It's so crazy now. I mean, you rightfully say that we're going from the left being racist to fascist. What's really happening here?
Well, I think what's remarkable is that the new fascism of our time marches behind the banner of anti-fascism. So that when you look at the people who are wearing masks, carrying weapons, blocking people from speaking, relying on a kind of intimidation and terrorism to cow everybody into silence, these are the modern day equivalents of Mussolini's black shirts and Hitler's brown shirts. The difference is that the black shirts and the brown shirts happily wore the label, whereas these new guys call themselves Antifa. They pretend to be fighting fascism. So the fascist theme is back in American politics. They're trying to pin the fascist label on Trump, on the Republicans. They have for a long time been cultivating the idea that fascism is a phenomenon of the right, We've all been taught that on the left you might have communism, but on the right you have fascism. And this lie is given some plausibility by the fact that Hitler and Stalin fought against each other in World War II. So it appears like they must be ideological opposites. But remember that Hitler and Stalin were allied at the beginning until Hitler turned on Stalin. In reality, fascism and communism are not that far apart. Their battle is better understood like the battle between the Shia and the Sunni. Very bitter battle, to be sure, but both operating from within the house of Islam. And so similarly, fascism and communism are two species of collectivism vying for power. And the whole idea that fascism and Nazism are on the right, that's a big, big lie.
I personally go out on the street now, and I have leftists come over and tell me they want to physically attack me and just hiss and yell and say Russian spy or Nazi, just all these comical things. Don't they realize they're in black, running around trying to bar people from speaking? They're running around trying to intimidate people. They're telling us what language to use. They're telling us hyper-political correctness. They're teaching classical racism now in mainstream news with MTV shows about the problem of being white. I mean, it's just insanity. And I'm not giving the, quote, minorities a pass here, but it's mainly led by university professors and people that are white. But they're creating their new cadres to lead the minorities, who are the majority when you put them together, into this system. And they're saying Trump won because of inherent racism, when it was the left that ran the campaign on a race-based system.
Yes, not only is the left tactically fascist, not only are they using the sort of tactics of the Nazis, but they also have the ideology of the Nazis. Let's remember that Nazism and fascism were both variants of socialism. Hitler's party was called the National Socialist Party. The very word Nazi is putting together national and socialista. That's where we get the sound Nazi. Mussolini was a Marxist. He was the leader of the Italian Socialist Party. He was recognized to be on the left. He saw himself as on the left. When Mussolini came to power, Lenin sent him a telegram of congratulations. Why? Because Lenin recognized that Mussolini was a fellow revolutionary of the left. So what an incredible sleight of hand in which these leftists, whose political platform reads like it's right out of the Democratic Party platform.
And by the way, Dinesh, this is something, you're absolutely right. This is something that leftists on universities say that we're lying about, and a real hot point from them, because it's a fact the Nazis were National Socialist. It's a fact that he modeled himself after the fascistas in Italy. It's a fact they wore black. It's a fact they wore masks. It's a fact they beat up their opposition. It's a fact that Hitler then turned against Stalin. They admired each other back and forth because he was seen as a rival politically and a rival militarily. But they had an alliance for the first year of the war where they divided Poland amongst each other. So we had the Warsaw Pact. They hope that's not known that they are authoritarian and that socialism and fascism have different and left-right versions, and that it was the American left that backed Hitler early on because he was a vegetarian and a bunch of other issues, and he wanted planning of society. This is incontrovertible that the KKK was founded by the Democratic Party. It is incontrovertible that the Republicans passed the Civil Rights Act and took, that system away from them, and they panicked. It is incontrovertible that the power structure got scared of American Christians and American Republicans and Eisenhower and created this whole new strategy to get everybody to go, oh, you're going to be liberal, you're going to be anti-racist, we'll take it over and make it extreme, own it, then double-cross you later and make everything race-based again once whites have been taught to bow down as long as you say something's for racial equality. So they're using our goodness, our bigness, our Christian Western ethos that unifies, who deny the West is the most open, to then bring us down.
Yes, I'll add to your list of incontrovertibles. It is incontrovertible, and I document this in the book, that Hitler got the specific blueprint for the Nuremberg laws, the laws that discriminated against Jews, segregated them into ghettos, later confiscated their property, state-sponsored discrimination. These laws are not just, you may say, and they're not just similar to the Jim Crow laws of the Democratic South. The Nazis actually used the blueprint of the democratic laws.
And Margaret Sanger. It's incredible. It's incredible.
And they wrote in Jew.
It's incredible. Your book documents it all. And Margaret Sanger, Hitler kept a book of hers signed by his bed. They wrote love letters to each other. The Rockefeller Foundation funded it all. The Rockefeller Foundation created the UN. The Rockefeller Foundation literally runs all this. So with your book, your research, your international skills, what is their master plan now? Because it's incontrovertible, a planned fascist society with no free speech, getting everybody to fight with each other over racial identity, sexual identity, putting us all in our ghettos, controlled by a superstate. Is that not the plan?
Well, we're obviously going to be under the accusation of exaggerating, of being paranoid. Dinesh, how can you use this term fascist? Now, here's my point. If we actually look at the policies of Obama, the policies supported now by Elizabeth Warren and by Bernie, I want to raise a question. Are these economic policies more accurately called socialist in the Marxist sense or fascist? Remember that the core meaning of fascism in economic terms is state-run capitalism. And if you look at what the progressives are all about, they're not really pursuing socialism per se. The socialists in every country want to nationalize industry. They want the government to actually nationalize and own the energy sector, the banks, and so on. Obviously, we still have private hospitals, we have private insurance companies, but the government is telling them what to do. The government is setting prices. Under Obama, we've seen government regulation expand dramatically.
It's a cult of power. They use social engineering against us. They use race to control us because they know how powerful it is. What do we do then when them double-crossing the Christian ethos of bringing people together? They've used our strength against us. What do we do?
So basically we need, and my last chapter is called denazification. And what that means is we've got to realize that we're actually facing a very bad bunch of guys who are willing to stop at nothing. We need knowledge, and then we need courageous action. So the knowledge is in the book. It's going to equip you. It's going to help you to fire back and move fascism out of the right-wing column, back into the left-wing column where it belongs. But knowledge is not enough. We've got to realize that we're dealing with people who are willing to break the law, who are willing to cause physical harm and destruction. We have to hold these people accountable. During the Civil War, when Abraham Lincoln found out that the Confederates were executing free blacks, he issued an order that he acknowledged was barbaric. He said, for every free black executed by the Confederacy, I am going to shoot one Confederate soldier. Now, he understood that this was very tough, but he realized, how else are we going to get these people to stop? I think we need to realize that we need to impose the law in a very tough way on these new fascists who are posing as anti-fascists. That's the only way to stop them. We need a new kind of Republican to actually carry this out.
What do we do about the minorities that they have whipped, even though that's not really the most out of control group I've seen, but we see the racial attacks on whites, on others, on Asians, being killed, being beaten to death, the knockout game. It's in the news every day, but the media whitewashes it. Islamists being brought into Europe, into here, the rape gangs, the cover-ups, the left banning people that criticize radical Islam. I mean, they're really coming in with massive censorship right now, calling us the racists, saying censor us, and a lot of folks have fallen for the trap going, we're not racist, don't censor us, instead of, hey, allow free speech on YouTube, on Google, on Facebook, and on Twitter, because once you start censoring one group, you'll censor everybody. I think we're losing the debate here because we argue we're not racist, which is true, but they don't care. Once they set the precedent to ban racist, they have the precedent to ban their opposition.
Yeah, the Democrats have always been the party of racial consciousness, of racial discrimination. And you might say that in a sense, they're doing the same thing now, only in the opposite direction. They've created this kind of multicultural tent. They supposedly ask every group to affirm its racial identity. Hey, blacks, you need to be proud of being black. Black is beautiful. Hey, Asians, you've got to be proud of being Asian, and so on, except whites. So there's a kind of exemption for whites, and everybody is encouraged to gang up, you might say, on the whites. Naturally, this has created a volatile situation. This, I think, helps to explain why some sort of white nationalists go, Trump is our only hope, because they would normally be in the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party has constructed itself in such a way that there's room for every kind of ethnic nationalism except white nationalists.
And I agree. And again, it's so cartoonish, and it's standard procedure. It's not like the radicals of the Democrats are doing this. It's in the WikiLeaks. They say, we're losing, and we're going to lose to this Republican idea and libertarian idea of economic empowerment. We've got to go to culture war. And they talk about using race baiting. And it's so cartoonish, the stuff they're doing all over the news, saying whites are inherently evil and having college courses about we must exterminate and get rid of whites, and feminist magazines saying if you're white and have a white baby, abort it. I mean, this is cuckoo level.
It completely is. And here I have to give Trump a little bit of credit, because in my lifetime, he's the only president that I've seen who understands that he needs to fight not just a political war, but a culture war. And, you know, Reagan, whom I adore, I was a young Reaganite in the 80s, but Reagan's view was you can't change the world in 10 ways or 20 ways. You can change the world in maybe 1 or 2 ways. So Reagan focused on the Soviet Union, he focused on taxation, and that's about it. But with Trump, here's a guy who's pulling us out of the trade pact and fighting to change Obamacare, and he's put Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, and at the same time he's swatting Meryl Streep and whopping Saturday Night Live, and he's taken on CNN. This guy, for a guy in his 70s, is energetic on all fronts, and I gotta say I like that.
Well, you say you gotta give him a little credit. I totally agree with you. Eric Trump has pointed out that he's tougher than the swamp creatures and is carrying the country on his back. How can you not marvel somebody that defeated the fake polls, defeated the rigged debates, came from behind, won big time, and has now killed TPP, killed the carbon tax that was meant to literally deindustrialize us, gotten the stock market up $3 trillion, despite the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, 69% reduction in illegals coming across the border, according to Homeland Security now in just 6 months. I mean, it goes on and on and on, breaking the back of political correctness, getting a good Supreme Court justice in. Of course the deep state hates him, because they'd conquered this country, and now it's come back from the dead.
It's unbelievable to see how so many in the Republican Party, they just don't get Trump, or at least Trump, they're scared of Trump. Part of it is that they worry Trump is going to blow them up with him. Part of it is that Trump acts in a way that is outside convention, and this is completely immobilizes them. And some of them are actively opposed to Trump. Sometimes I feel in the intellectual sphere, I'm almost all by myself. The conservative intelligentsia has turned away from Trump, if not against Trump. This, I think, is intellectual suicide on the part of our side. This is a time where if we come together, victory is totally in our grasp. Yes. We can push back this fascist strain in American culture. We have 3 branches of government to do it. And what the left is pulling out all the stops.
Well, a lot of these Republican establishment have been rhinos, Republican in name only, as you know, and they have been there the whole time. They know they're in desperate straits. They want to be the ruling class. They don't want to send power back to the states and back to the people. So Jeff Flake comes out and says, I'm a globalist. I don't like Trump. And Democratic operatives, you know, on national TV like Stephanopoulos celebrate the Republicans in the Senate turning their back on Trump like this is some defeat of Trump. They're the problem. They're the ones that helped write Obamacare to begin with. It's Trump getting rid of the scam. His failure to repeal it is their failure. And it just makes him more of a champion. We must target them in the upcoming midterms. We must punish them, not look at Trumpism as a failure. As you said, victory is in our grasp. A global realignment is happening for nationalism, free market, and common sense. The tide is going out. The elites even admit that. And so they want to run this mind game on us. Like National Review just wrote this big story saying death of a salesman, that Trump's a total failure, always been a failure. The guy's the biggest, you know, dark horse winner in modern American politics. The guy is nothing but a success story, a titan of resistance, a titan of going up against peer pressure, a titan of breaking the elites back.
You know, for a whole generation since Reagan, we've had these absolutely intellectually shallow, incoherent Republican leaders, and the whole conservative intelligentsia obediently lined up behind them, saluted what they did, even when it was abominably stupid. And now when Trump comes along, they go, he's not a conservative. He's acting in a more conservative way than George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush. He's certainly more conservative than McCain, let alone Bob Dole. So this is the most conservative president we've seen in a generation. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why the Bill Kristols of the world and all these dudes are acting as if Trump is some kind of a liberal in disguise.
Because they're weak-minded and they care about mainstream media and the cocktail parties because they're old. They're part of the old system. They don't understand their time has come and gone. And obviously, Dinesh, you know, come from common folks, have been successful on your own action, just like myself and many others. And we're together for free market, for a future, for a system that is anti-racist, anti-tribal, and that is pro-human, going to the stars. The book is The Big Lie, bigliebook.com. Dinesh D'Souza, thanks for joining us. Look forward to having you back on again, my friend.
Look forward to it.
Powerful information.